The last generation for console gamers was home to many unique experiences. One of my personal favourites is Dead Rising. Now Dead Rising, for those who don't know, is a Keiji Inafune game, who is known for his tight involvement during the creation of the Mega Man series. Dead Rising spans 6 games, even more if you count re-releases in the mobile version, and on top of that 3 films. The game launched on the Xbox 360 on August 8th, 2006 in North America, and the rest of the world throughout September. I remember hearing about Dead Rising for the first time, and that was one of the reasons that I was sold on the Xbox 360, that and Gears of War. Now I first played the game that Christmas and found it really punishing back then, thanks to the time mechanic, and me being younger, clearly not as good as video games, I was quite frustrated that you couldn't turn the timer off. I found this mechanic induced a lot of pressure, coupled with saving survivors and completing the main missions, not to mention the psychopaths on top. At the time I found this game extremely difficult, however over the years I still noticed myself wanting to play the sequels despite my trouble with the difficulty from the first game. The game can be brutal, there's no question about it. That said though, over time I grew to love all the mechanics the game had to offer. The sense of accomplishment you got when you managed to complete 2 side missions, kill a psychopath, and finish the main mission just by the skin of your teeth before time ran out was really awesome. The game centers around a timer, and that's a key concept that makes Dead Rising Dead Rising. You would have 72 hours in game time before a bomb is dropped on Willamette, which is the equivalent of 6 hours in real time to rescue as many survivors as you can, kill as many psychopaths as you could, level up as much as you managed, and completed all main missions before time runs out. When the original got a makeover for current gen consoles, I played it again, and I forgot how satisfying this game actually is. I love my time with it, and so much more now that I'm older. I found it difficult, yet fair. Found myself being able to manage time just fine. Sure, it was tight now and then, but it was fair and fun. The inventory management system is an additional mechanic that serves as a core piece of the game. You need to plan ahead, else you could find yourself in a bit of trouble when things get heated. And because you never know when old buddy Otis will ring you with a survivor mission. The first title was developed by one of Capcom's internal production studios in Chiroku, Osaka. Fast forward to June 2nd, 2009, and a video surfaced online of a new Dead Rising game set in Las Vegas, but not being developed by Capcom's own internal studios this time around, but a studio going by the name of Blue Castle Games. That same week, Capcom ended up confirming the game by officially announcing Dead Rising 2. I remember having mixed opinions at the time. One, I wanted to see more Frank West, and 2, who the fuck are Blue Castle Games? Ah, that's why I've never heard of them, because up until that point they'd only developed 3 games. The Bigs 2, and MLB Front Office Manager. Dead Rising 2 released in all regions in September 2010, this time with co-op and multiplayer modes. Again, when this game got a remaster, I went back and played it. I didn't have as much fun as the first entry, however, but I remember when it initially launched that I enjoyed this game more than the first, and thinking back to it now, it was probably because Dead Rising 2 is just easier, and now I appreciate and welcome the difficulty the first one offered. So the time mechanic remained, all other mechanics remained actually, with the addition of combining weapons. Now we had some expansion type games release in and around Dead Rising 2, coupled with some DLC, but in terms of mainline follow-ups, everything was quite silent on that front. But then Dead Rising 3 was announced during E3 2013 as a launch title for the Xbox One. I was hyped, and honestly that and Killer Instinct sold me on the Xbox. Dead Rising 3 released that November. Now this game was somewhat controversial in the sense that it was just too easy and started to deviate from what made Dead Rising unique. My guess is that they thought bigger would be better. Because of how big the world was, the time mechanic was dumbed down, the save points too. The game did have a nightmare mode, which was supposed to cater towards the core fans of the game. This did little really. Even on nightmare mode, the game was stupidly easy and forgiving. Still enjoyed my time with Dead Rising 3, but I could feel what was Dead Rising slipping away in that game, but what came next spoke volumes. So here we are to Dead Rising 4. DR4 got announced at E3 2016. First impressions, it looked good actually. And by first impressions, I'm literally talking about the initial trailer. Although I can't say I was ever a fan of the Christmas setting, but regardless, Frank was back and the game seemed to be set back in Willamette Mall. And this is where everything started going downhill, because interviews came out and so did more footage. The interviews seemed to suggest that the game was heavily focus tested, and the final product really shows that. Joe Nichols, studio director, seems to reference a lot to what we've tested and what players want.
We've actually, and like in terms of the food, we've streamlined that too, because we've done it where you can go, you pick up the food and instantly put it into a separate inventory, and then you have all your little crosses on the bottom.
Yeah.
And then when you need to hit food, down on the D-pad, bam, fill it up. You still see the animation of doing it, but you don't have to go and spend time to prepare the food.
Oh man!
Because we found people really didn't like that.
Pivoting off, like in this game, in 4, are we going to see the same traditional like day and night cycles and like a hard day limit for when you have to be finished with the game?
No. So we've taken the time away.
Oh, wow.
Because we had a lot of... So what we did was we kept time in one place and we got rid of it in another. Because this game has got so much more side content and stuff to explore and find, we did a lot of testing and we found that people could never complete the stuff in the amount of time. And then we had to give you so much time to do it that time meant nothing. So we got rid of that element of the game.
A quick note about some of the directors on this game is that there were some of them who haven't even worked on a Dead Rising game before this. Could have never have guessed. Joe Nichols, the now studio director of Blue Castle Games, or rather Capcom Vancouver, has previously worked on such blockbuster AAA hits as Connect Joyride, Connect Sports, and Joyride Turbo. Bryce Cochrane, the executive producer on Dead Rising 4, has worked on Halo 4 and FIFA. Jeff Coates, the art director, has titles like Company of Heroes 2 and Ghost Recon for Wii under his belt. So essentially Dead Rising connoisseurs that know exactly what they're doing with the genre, with the franchise, and when they say they're focus testing mechanics, it's certainly not because they lack the imagination and confidence in their own abilities to steer the direction of the game themselves, but that they want to gauge what hardcore Dead Rising and totally not random video game testers enjoy. Now I get it, Dead Rising has gradually got more and more ridiculous, and while the ridiculousness of the weapons, combos and vehicles are fun, if there isn't solid gameplay to bolster that, then it's just another hack and slash game akin to Dynasty Warriors at this point. Obviously that's an exaggeration. I enjoy the ridiculousness to a degree, but there comes to a point where this is what the devs feel like they need to go all in on, but it's not. An interesting addition to a mechanic that was already established in the first game is the photography. Now in DR4, Frank can use his camera to solve puzzles and find clues. Personally, this was probably the only interesting addition to the game. Everything else was just not Dead Rising anymore. But speaking of Frank, what in the name of bloody Phenotrans did they do to him? What happened to the real, somewhat quirky and unconventional character from the first game? He's now a smart ass who just tries to crack jokes all the time. The time mechanic was shelved entirely because their test groups didn't enjoy it. Just binned. There's no more day-night cycle, this only happens through natural story progression. In an interview with Eurogamer, executive producer Bryce Cochrane said they wanted to change the direction of the game and they felt it was the right way to go because they wanted people to explore more of the world and not have a timer and feel like they're restricted. Okay. And Joe Nichols in a GameIndustry.biz interview quoted Steve Jobs in saying, "A lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them." So he was clearly confident in his own abilities, but he was just focus testing everything. It really does sound like every part of this game was focus tested, and that is what made Dead Rising 4. The focus groups. He then goes on to say that Microsoft have around 40,000 people ready to come in to test the game. Okay, that's 40,000 people. Are they fans of the previous entries? Are they just random testers, that have just kind of contracted by Microsoft? They found people were struggling with the inventory management, the timer, difficulty of the psychopaths, all these different things, and that's why everything is streamlined in this game. They like to go on about them wanting to innovate, but I'm not sure if innovation is just removing features and then streamlining existing ones. The actual fighting mechanics had a significant overhaul as well, and unsurprisingly not for the better. In an attempt to streamline what seems like everything at this point, weapons fell into one of 3 categories: melee, ranged, and throwable. So this means that not all items are throwable anymore. Additionally, this gives you even more inventory space than ever before. Remember when inventory management rode on you saving space for food items but retaining enough weapons to complete your mission or missions at hand? Well, fuck that, because food no longer takes up space. Instead, it's replaced by pressing down on the D-pad to consume health. The only thing that would make this worse is if they removed food mixing. Oh wait, they did. Now onto the zombies. Not much to mention, but no more attack boost at night. Gone are the queen wasps, and they like to boast about the new types of zombies in the interviews, but in the actual game they fell flat. Survivors, gone are the days of the escorts. Joe Nichols said this in an interview with Inside Gaming, which was quite confusing.
You have to go save and
Yep.
join your party. Are we going to see more of that in this one?
Yep, and it's better. I mean, it's not like I'm making the perfect game, right? It's better because before you'd help a survivor and they go, thanks. You just take off. It's like, well, that was worth it.
Yeah.
Now, when you help survivors, they drop loot.
Oh,
They
wow.
drop
Okay.
stuff for you, and sometimes it's amazing stuff. Sometimes they have a combo weapon in their jacket, or they have or something you really want to get.
Now, I'm not sure what game they were playing, but I remember when I was playing Dead Rising 1 and 2, when you find a survivor, you don't just leave them there, and neither do they just run away. You escort them in a variety of different ways to your safe room so that you get XP. Now, after he said that, I was thinking, has this guy really just only played the third game? What is it with the direction of this game and stripping out core features players have come to expect? I miss finding a survivor and having them tell me their condensed backstory, all while 10 zombies enter a room, time is ticking, and all I want to do is help them, but they keep babbling on. I genuinely mean that. I am completely sincere when I say that. I miss that part of the game. It gives them more character, it gives you some background on why they're there and what they're doing, but it's all gone here. Now onto the psychopaths. Now this is a part of the game that I really enjoyed from the other entries. I loved the uniqueness of every boss battle, the challenge that came with it, and the cool shit you would get. Sometimes it would be a unique weapon or combo, sometimes they would be holding survivors hostage and you'd get a ton of XP from rescuing them. Because there's a pattern here, they're gone from Dead Rising 4. In their place, we now have maniacs. What's the difference? A lot for some reason. Every single one is optional. No longer do we have a quirky, unique intro-outro cutscene. In addition, or should I say, in subtraction, none of the maniacs provide unique fighting styles either, or music. We've come to expect a somewhat challenging battle, study their attack patterns a little bit, and strike when you see they're left open. Co-op has been entirely removed, well kinda. Now while this one feature never really appealed that much to me, I fully appreciate players who enjoy progressing through the campaigns with their friends, and to have this as a feature Capcom Vancouver introduced since Dead Rising 2, to now remove it and replace it only for a handful of repetitive, isolated, short missions seems to only add to the misguided direction the game took. If they focus tested this, who in their right mind thought co-op campaign with their friends wasn't fun? I just don't understand this one. And they decided on the setting, Christmas, and in a game that's centered around Christmas, the season of giving and togetherness, Capcom Vancouver like taking things away. So it's only fitting that on top of everything else I've brought up, not only does the story not offer multiple endings, the overtime, or true ending I suppose, is locked behind paid DLC. Funnily enough though, Joe didn't want to address this in the interviews.
Will we see a return of like the classic multiple endings with Dead Rising? You know, depending on what you do.
We're keeping mum on that.
Okay.
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 Because
Well,
if I say yes, multiple endings, how many multiple endings?
Right,
You know,
right.
It always comes up. So we're just being really quiet on that.
Not to mention all the bugs and frame rate issues this game suffered from at launch. The game was a huge step back in every single direction. The end product really is a case study to what happens when you focus test your game to hell and back and you have directors in charge who haven't had close ties to the previous installments. And what happens when you don't play your damn games? I get developers want to innovate, but this isn't that. It's stripping and streamlining features that didn't need to be stripped or streamlined. Needless to say, this game was a massive flop. Making it a 12-month time exclusive on Xbox probably didn't help either, because by the time it came to PS4, players had already seen the outcome and backlash of Dead Rising. Most were probably glad that they didn't waste their money on it. Capcom estimated Dead Rising 4 selling at least 2 million copies. During their financial earnings report in 2017, Dead Rising 4 hadn't reached their platinum status, which is reserved for games that sell at least 1 million copies. According to VG charts, DR4's lifetime sales have sold just over 1 million on Xbox. This isn't counting PS4, but those sales are probably in the realm of the PC sales. We have to remember, the launch on Xbox One and the backlash it faced tarnished this game long before its multi-platform release. So going forward, where are we now? Well, Capcom Vancouver shut down as of September 18th, 2018 as part of a massive restructure in Capcom. Capcom shifted their focus from overseas studios back to homeland Japan. I hope going forward, Capcom learns from this. And earlier this year, during Capcom's yearly earnings call, Capcom still considered Dead Rising IP as an important one. This suggests that we will see another Dead Rising game in the future. Not only that, but Capcom are putting their time into this and aren't rushing it to market. I'm positive Capcom heard the feedback and backlash from DR4, and it's up to their internal studios to steer the franchise onto the right path again. The game needs a hard reboot at this point. I don't want to see them try to make the next one even wackier. I don't want them to try and top themselves. I'd like to see something closer to the first game, but how long will we have to wait? I'm guessing sooner than we think actually. I do feel like we'll see a new title announced close to the launch of the next gen consoles. Maybe not as a launch title. I don't however think it would be exclusive this time around. I'd be really surprised if it were. I think Capcom is past that at this point, but who knows. All I know is what went wrong with Dead Rising 4, and that was a handful of executives, a misguided direction, and a focus testing smorgasbord.
It's Frank. Frank West. Remember that name because the whole world's gonna know it in 3 days.